Welcome to this training module. Today, we're covering the absolute first step in assessing any application's security, the discovery phase. You have to think of it like this. We're building the map before we even think about exploring the territory. Okay, so here's our game plan. We're going to start with the why, really understanding the application battlefield. Then we'll get into our core methodology, the enumeration process, how we use a tool like Nmap for that first scan, how we turn all that raw data into visual intelligence, and finally, how we transform all of that information into a solid prioritized list of targets. So let's start with a big question. Why the intense focus on web applications? Well, in pretty much any environment a penetration tester walks into, web apps are the most common and frankly the most exposed assets. You gotta think of them as the real front line of cyber defense. And of course, attack. Now take a look at this number. This comes from a 2021 Barracuda research survey that looked at over 750 large organizations. What they found is pretty staggering. 72% of them suffered at least one breach, all because of a web application vulnerability. This really represents a fundamental truth about modern security. So what this statistic really tells us is that web application security isn't just a problem. For a lot of companies, it's the primary problem. See, as organizations get better at hardening their network perimeters, attackers just pivot to the path of least resistance. And right now, that's web apps. They're the most attractive and, honestly, the most successful entry point. That's why they are our #1 priority. All right, so we've got the why down pat. Let's get into the how. We need a systematic way to map this whole digital landscape. And that process, well, we call it enumeration. You know, an organization should have a complete inventory of all its assets, but the reality is, most just don't. A lot of the time, our job as testers actually starts by building this inventory for them. We're on the hunt for forgotten demo servers, unpatched software, and that unauthorized shadow IT that people set up, all of which create these massive security gaps. And just take a look at this table. It shows you the sheer complexity we're up against. We're not just looking for one type of application, right? We're hunting for everything, from content management systems like Joomla, to app servers like Tomcat, all the way to development tools like Jenkins and GitLab. This variety makes trying to do this manually completely impossible. So, to cut through all that complexity, we don't start by getting lost in the details. We begin with a broad but intelligent scan to find the open doors, basically the running web services. And our primary tool for this is, of course, Nmap. Now, the key word here is targeted. We're not trying to boil the ocean by scanning all 65,000 ports on every single host. That would take forever. Instead, we hunt for the most common web ports first to get a quick lay of the land. It's all about being efficient. This right here is the exact command a professional would use to kick things off. Let's just break it down real quick. We're telling Nmap to scan a specific list of common web ports, like 8080 for Apache Tomcat or 10,000 for Webmin. We use the -open flag to only show us the ones that are actually open. And crucially, we use -OA to save the output in all formats, including an XML file, which becomes absolutely essential in our next step. And here's what we get back. It's a list of hosts and open ports. Now, don't get me wrong, this is valuable data, but it's just raw text. It tells us what's open, but it doesn't give us the context we need to decide what to look at first. We found all the doors, but we have absolutely no idea what's behind them. And that brings us to our next critical step, turning all this raw data into actionable intelligence. We need a way to quickly peek behind all those open doors without having to go and knock on each one individually. I mean, this is the fundamental challenge of the discovery phase, right? Manually browsing to every single IP address and port combination is incredibly time-consuming, it's inefficient, and you're almost always on a time-constraint assessment. We need a much better way. And this is the solution. There's this phenomenal tool called Eyewitness that automates the really tedious part of our job. It takes that Nmap XML file we just created, goes out and visits every single one of those web services, takes a screenshot, and then organizes it all into a clean, interactive report. This is the real payoff. This is where the magic happens. Eyewitness doesn't just give us a bunch of pictures. It helps us spot high-value targets at a glance. For a penetration tester, seeing an Apache Tomcat Manager interface or a Jenkins login panel, that's like finding gold. These applications are notorious for misconfigurations that can lead to a full system compromise, something we call remote code execution. And this quote from a real-world engagement just perfectly highlights why this process is so critical. A single application, buried deep in a report of hundreds of hosts, was left exposed with default credentials. Just admin. That one tiny oversight led to a full compromise of their internal network because the application was running as a domain admin. Thoroughness is everything. Okay, so this brings us to a really crucial point. The discovery phase isn't just some academic exercise in collecting data. The entire goal is to filter out all the noise and create a concise, actionable plan for the next phase of the assessment. And this right here, this is the workflow that gets us there. It's a simple, repeatable process. We start by reviewing that visual report from Eyewitness. From there, we identify the most promising targets. Like those Tomcat and Jenkins instances we saw. Then we do our homework. We research those specific applications for known vulnerabilities or default credentials. And only then do we begin a deeper, more focused enumeration on that short, prioritized list. The key takeaway here is this. A successful penetration test isn't about luck. It's about methodology. By building a solid foundation through thorough, intelligent discovery, you transform this massive, unknown attack surface into a small set of high-probability targets. The question is no longer, where do I even start? But rather, which of these keys will unlock the kingdom?